Today on the Disruptive Voices of the Pacific, I want to welcome with me a very special guest, Pastor Conan Hatch in the beautiful city of Nandi. Hello, Pastor. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Pastor Letitia. Yeah, I'm glad to be here with you.
Yes.
Heard so much about the podcast. Watched a couple of them, and so I'm looking forward to actually being on something that we
Okay.
can talk about this issue.
Yeah,
It's very
fantastic.
good.
Well, today you're the star. And we're
Oh
talking
no.
about we're talking again, as always, about generally a taboo issue, and that's the topic of abortion. Um, and maybe something that we don't talk enough about. As Christians, as pastors, we should be the most pro-life people on the face of the earth because every life has value, no matter how it is conceived. And so it's important that as Christians, we can speak up for life, we can fight for life. And even though abortion is illegal in Fiji, it's still alive and well. But how did you become involved in this topic, Pastor?
Yeah. Well, when we were still planting a church in Nandi in the early years, I used to read. Like sometimes when babies, the fetus or the baby the baby fetus is found somewhere and then it comes out in the national news. And I
Mm.
remember picking up the newspaper a couple of times and seeing it, in the newspaper, about people finding babies, and then even in toilets, and things like that. And I remember reading those and just being brokenhearted about it, and just having that brokenness and wondering what can we do about it, like sometimes you actually read about something and because it's on a national level, like you feel so helpless because you are just like one teeny tiny voice in this sea of people. So what can one person do? And so I remember praying about it and even crying about it. And then one day Karen walks in. I mean, Ryan and Karen of Life Runners. That time they were complete strangers to us. So we thought they were just tourists here on a holiday. And so they walk into our church service, and I meet them at the door. And then later on, cut a long story short, I actually find out that they're part of this ministry that brings awareness, for the unborn. And then I find out later that all it takes for me is just to simply wear a T-shirt, like the one I'm wearing
Yeah.
now, and it has a message on the back which says, "Remember the unborn," and it's Jeremiah 1:5.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I saying, "Oh wow, does that mean I can just put on the T-shirt, become a billboard, just to bring this awareness to people everywhere, wherever I go, people can just read that particular message." And yeah, I just fell in love with the message. I fell in love with the whole the way that you could get the message out. And then I started to see results along the way. People would actually call us up. People would actually planning for abortion would actually see us walking on the streets of Nandi, and they would say, "Oh, I remember seeing that T-shirt, and I want to get in touch with you guys. I have this problem." And there's a few babies that have been saved along the way. I mean, in those years, in the early years of ministry, it started around 2014. Very very informal type,
Yeah.
before we actually registered, years later. And that's
Amazing.
and that's how I got involved. Yeah, sorry, just trying to cover everything in a nutshell, kind of thing.
Oh, and that's amazing. I love it because God was stirring your heart. And many
Yeah,
people won't know Karen and Ryan, but they are a couple who have moved from America. They live in Nandi, and
yeah.
Karen particularly linked. She has the same passion and has linked you two together that way. And you've been a part of the core team of Life Runners, which is now
Mhm.
right around Fiji. So tell us a little bit more about Life Runners and what you do.
Yeah, okay. Well, Life is basically a Christian organization, faith-based, and it sort of is open to all churches. Anyone who wants to sign up. If you're a Christian and you want to sign up, you want to carry the message, you have a passion for the unborn, you're free to sign up. And we try to bring this awareness out, the T-shirts mainly, but we also offer training and counseling and all that. Yeah, and so we aim to bring awareness that, to try to protect the unborn and the unborn mother, the mother of the unborn as well. Like we try to somehow protect that, and we try to offer that to those who are planning abortions and and things like that. Because I don't think there's ever been an organization like this in Fiji. That people could actually speak to somebody. They could actually have a conversation, have a discussion. And Fiji culture is more talanoa. It's like talking culture. And so that is what we want to bring to the nation, is basically a group of us who are passionate, and we're here to help, and we try to make it easy for people to connect with us, and make it easy for people to receive some sort of counsel and help in some way.
Yeah.
So Life Runners is basically here to help protect the unborn and also the mother of the unborn as well, in any way that we possibly can.
Mm. Yes, so that will look like, I know most Saturdays there's teams, whether it's in Suva, Nandi, Latoka,
Mm.
Lambasa, teams of people from Life Runners wearing their blue shirts, and you're out in public spaces. You're prayer walking, but also, as you said, you're there to be approached, be able to talk. So there's kind of that awareness side, but then I know you're doing a lot of training some of your volunteers now on how to give counseling.
Yeah. Okay, first we started off with basically the walks, like what you were saying. The walks every Saturdays. We would actually start off in Nandi, just a small group of us, and then some people from Lotoka picked up the message. Then they signed up. We sent T-shirts to them, and then they started walking. And then I think Suva opened up for a short while, and then I think Suva sort of went on and off, kind of thing, until Love Suva came up and sort of really offered a helping hand to us, to us. So that's how Suva is kind of really blossoming again. And then now we have people out there on Saturdays walking as well. So I got to thank you, Letitia, and also the Love Suva pastors. That was amazing. And yeah, and apart from that, we also have walkers in Rotuma. Of all places, it's right in Rotuma as well. And so I'm pretty glad about that. And yeah, and so that started off just as walking, but now it's sort of moving on and progressing into offering counseling services, where we've actually linked up with a international organization based out in the US called Beautiful Life, Beautiful Feet International. Sorry, Beautiful Feet International. That is, that offers the core curriculum and the certification, for people wanting to go through counseling training. And this is pregnancy crisis counseling, just like people who are actually some kind of crisis during their pregnancy or going into their pregnancy. And so they just want to talk to somebody. So we offer that not only to women, but also to men as well, because we know it's not just the women who actually, are involved in this, but also the men who actually are part of this whole process as well. Well, see, so yeah, see, so Karen has been very instrumental in sort of linking us up with this professional counseling organization that has brought in, the certification and this counseling program. So if anyone who joins Life Runners after a period of time, if they are very faithful, they're very committed, they can sign up for counseling training as well. So this will help them also in their personal life as well. Mm.
Yeah, that's so good. So I'm going to, when I post this interview on Facebook, I'll put up a link to your website. So if people want to get
Okay, great.
involved, they'll know how to. Or
Right.
if you're a pregnant woman out there and you're needing some counseling or help, or even if you've had an abortion and you would like some counseling, I know they offer
Yeah.
post-abortion counseling as well. So that's really important. I have been conducting a survey. What my next book that I'm putting together for Fiji is Stories of Abortion. And I've been doing a survey, an online survey, just collecting information on, yeah, people who have had abortions, people who know someone who's had an abortion, and I've worked out that it's alive and well, the abortion
Yeah.
industry in
Yeah.
Fiji.
Yeah.
Why, even though it's illegal, what is causing people to turn to abortions?
Yeah, well, that's a that's a multi, I mean, I can't just say one answer, see,
No.
because there's a multi, factual kind of answers, so multifaceted answers. And so I think basically, there's a real lack of awareness. The problems with with sex before marriage, first of all, and the sex outside of marriage as well. And there's a lack of awareness of the dangers of that. But not only that, there's also lack of awareness of help for people who's wanting to keep the baby and they don't want to abort. There was actually a survey. I think it was done a few years ago. There's a survey done in the US where about 82% of women who had gone through abortions, they actually said that if they had one person who had offered support or like a simple encouragement, they would not have gone through with the abortion. And so you're looking at a real lack of awareness, and so that's where Life Runners come in, comes in, and we try to not only tell the public out there when we walk, we want to bring this message to churches as well, because there's a lot of abortion happening within church members as well, across the body of Christ. In Fiji, there's a lot of abortions happening, and basically a lot of it comes out of shame. And abortions happen a lot because of the shame culture that we are in, because people just don't want to, highlight that, my daughter had, my daughter is pregnant, or somebody's pregnant in the family, so they push people towards abortion. So there's a lot of stigma to do with with the shame culture. There's also pressures, cultural pressures, career choices. So it's a lot of things that are happening at the same time. So as Life Runners, like what we try to do is at least do what we can, and basically bring awareness, try to partner with churches that sort of can partner with us or want to partner with us, because not every church wants to talk about this message as well, because it's not a popular message to preach often, and so that's why we just want to make sure that we're getting the message out there as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. It's but it's such a vital message, isn't it? That because if you think so many people in
Yeah.
our congregation, they're suffering in silence, they've been pressured
Yeah.
into the abortion, it's the shame factor. And then they're just suffering because again, the research just talks about the trauma that you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the survey I've done, so many women said that they had huge mental health issues after their
Yeah.
abortion. And so there's
Yeah.
just so many ramifications. And as a pastor, I know you do preach on this topic.
Mm.
Why do you preach, or what angle do you come from when you're preaching?
Okay. Okay. Well, to be honest, because Karen is part of our congregation, Karen is part of our church. And so Karen basically is the one who actually preaches on it from time to time. So I don't know whether I've ever preached a full message basically just on, abortion, pro-life. But what I've done is I've sort of put this message into different points during
Yeah.
different sermons, just to make sure that I'm not overwhelming the congregation with like abortion, abortion, abortion. But I got to make sure that I space it out properly, and I got to make sure that it's in different points and stuff. But apart from that, uh, if you would just be part of our church for a couple of weeks, you'd basically come to realize that most of the people in our church basically are Life Runners. You see, the reason is because I promote it during the announcements. I talk about it at different occasions. And we constantly reminding the people about the need to stand up for the unborn. So
Mm,
while I don't put a full message on it, because I'm in our church and Karen is always there, she's always bringing it up, and I'm always including it during my messages as well. I think our people have basically become a real pro-life church, like a church that really stands up for the unborn. And so I think my main focus is basically when I meet with other pastors as well. That's where I sort of thrive better. Talking about abortion. So when we have pastors meetings and stuff, then I bring about, the bridge that I use, when you talk about angles, the bridge that I use is basically to introduce Life Runners first,
mm,
and the shirt. So what I do is I just talk about Life Runners, then that gives me a bridge into talking about pro-life, talking about the dangers of abortion, things like that. And so I have to be very careful. I have to be very strategic in how I preach it to the church, to the pastors, and to every area that I have to, deal with. So yeah, yeah. My main focus a lot is to pastors themselves and to other church leaders as well, to try to bring them into the fold.
Yeah,
And so that's basically what I do. Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Mm.
Obviously, preaching is one way to help raise awareness, but what are some other ways in which churches can help support single mothers so they don't abort? As yeah, I think the statistic is
Mm.
70% of women who had abortions wouldn't have if there was support. And in my survey, I've asked Fijian women, do you think the church would judge you or help you? And the overriding attitude is judgment.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
rightly or wrongly. So what
Yeah.
can we do where the church, you'd want a pregnant woman to come to you straight away. We'd way prefer that
Yeah.
than abort the baby. So what can we do to change that?
Yeah, I think you actually hit the nail on its head because, and I think that's basically the issue because, if you look at the attitude of churches and basically, I think a lot of us, I put myself in that, in that category. If I was thinking of myself like many years ago when I first became a pastor, I think the prevailing attitude at that time was like judgment rather than mercy. It was more like I mean, you got to be holy, you got to do this, you got to do that. But as time goes on, then you meet people like Karen, and you hear the messages, and you hear different ways, ways that the pro-life message is being preached. I've actually come to realize is that the church really needs to become better at sort of embracing people, because like rather than just, like I'm not saying permit the sin, but you can still love people in spite of the sin, and so I think rather than saying, saying you're not welcome here, I think it's very important for us as churches to become more embracing, more loving, more outreaching. uh, I think I go back to remembering there was a girl from our fellowship who became pregnant, and she was ashamed to come to church for a while. And so for me personally, that's a challenge to me, and that reminds me that maybe I'm not doing my job effectively, as a pastor, and that sort of breaks my heart as well. So I think I'm sorry. So I think to myself, it's only good if churches can become, you know, uh, have that kind of culture where if our daughters, from different families face problems, they know, oh, I can go to church because church
Mm,
is a refuge. But that really shocked me, to hear this young girl, saying, I'm ashamed to go to church, and I'm thinking, wow, we preach a lot about love, but I think we sort of have an, like underlying attitude,
mm,
that our children pick up on, and then they start to think, oh, if I do something wrong, I can't go to church.
yeah.
And that's something I think that is prevalent across across the body of Christ in Fiji, especially. You
Mm,
know, I know we're good at preaching holiness, but we're not very good in embracing, embracing the lost.
yeah.
The loss that is even amongst us, people who have become really disillusioned, or they get pregnant, or they make mistakes in their own life. Like sometimes we tend to judge them before we show mercy, and so that's something that I was, greatly shocked, greatly challenged, and it happened just recently, maybe 6 months ago or something, and I was shocked when my wife told me, and I was just thinking, wow, is that us, is that are we the kind of church that people feel as if they're not welcome, if they make a mistake.
Yeah.
So yeah, see, so I'm hoping that I can be a catalyst in some way, to help churches become more embracing,
Mm.
and not just for the abortion issue, but it covers almost every other
Every
issue.
issue.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it's important to note pregnancy is not a sin. Now,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
the act
yeah,
of sex
yeah.
outside of marriage, it might
Mm,
have been, but pregnancy itself is not a sin. Every baby is knitted in the mother's womb, as
yeah,
the Bible says.
yeah.
Um, you know, there's always, whenever we have this conversation about abortion and pro-life issues, there's always somebody in the crowd who says, well, what if the baby was conceived in rape? Does that not
Mm.
give us the right to abort? What would you say? What would be your answer to a question like that?
I would just say, please, why don't you give us the baby and we'll look for a parent or something, because when you think about it, that that child is basically unaware of what the parents did, whoever did, I mean, the baby is innocent. The baby is basically a unique human, in the womb. The baby is a unique human who has not committed rape, himself or herself. And so by aborting the child, we're actually judging the child to have participated in the rape,
Mm.
which is almost like a double judgment. So I think, I've heard even stories where a woman, even though she has had an abortion because of rape, she feels there's something that has really followed her throughout after that. That's, I think, a better healing process would have been for her if she could have got counseling from us in some way, and sort of keep the baby until her full term, deliver the baby, and even before that, we can arrange to have adoption procedures in place. Yeah,
Mm.
place. It would be better if the mom couldn't keep the baby because of the trauma involved. The mom could give the baby up for adoption. And that's I think would be a better route to take rather than the route of abortion.
Yeah,
And I think, yeah, and I think people jump to that decision without even speaking to somebody who might offer an alternative.
totally.
So yeah, yeah.
Yes, but yeah, solving the problem of rape with then a murder doesn't fix the problem.
Mm, no,
No, I
it
met a
doesn't. Yeah,
woman last month. She's now a pastor.
yeah.
She's in her 60s. She was conceived from
Mm.
gang rape. Her mother was gang
Oh,
raped
wow,
60 years ago in
wow.
Australia, but the
Yeah,
mother gave birth, adopted her, and this woman went
wow,
on to then start homes for girls who have been sex trafficked, and she's helped over 5,000 girls who have been sex
wow.
trafficked. You
Praise
know,
the Lord.
what
Yeah,
God has done in her life is incredible. And
yeah.
so if, she
Mm.
had been aborted at that young age, God still has a plan and a purpose no matter how you were conceived, is really,
Yeah,
really important.
definitely,
An
definitely.
important
Wow.
message that church has to get out.
Mm,
I used to look at single mothers and judge them, but then I was convicted that I've got to look at them and
mm.
go, you are so courageous for keeping your baby.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Wow,
sometimes
wow. Yeah.
abortion can be the quick fix to deal with the
Mm,
problem, but it takes a lot of courage, especially as a single mother, to give birth.
mm,
Yep, to wear the shame, the stigma. And so now I just look at
mm.
these single mothers and they're my heroes because I know they've had to go through
Amen.
a lot in that way.
Amen.
Why is it, this might seem funny to be having this conversation with a male.
Mm.
Why
Yeah,
are we talking
yeah.
about abortion with a man? What's he got to do with it? Why is it important that men are in this conversation?
Yeah, I think that, well, if I could say, I think many men would respond to culture. I hope I'm saying it right. I remember during my dad's time. That's about like years ago. When you made a girl pregnant, you would have to stand with her. I mean, and abortion was never discussed. It was like if the girl got pregnant, you kind of had to stand with her, even get married. I mean, in today's culture, we would think, no, 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 you can't force somebody to get married. But that was the culture at that time. People took responsibility for their actions. And yeah, see, so So I think a lot has to do with culture, where now it seems easier to just walk away, just like make a girl pregnant when walk away. That's one aspect. But the other aspect is there are also men who want the want his partner to keep the child, but but they need counseling as well, because what if the partner refuses to keep the child and wants an abortion, things like that. See, so yeah, so some of those men also need to go through a level of counseling, and I think in a sense that's where churches come in as well,
Mm.
where churches need to become places where men can talk, because a lot of churches we just have men's meetings, men's meetings, and then men come and they have praise and worship, very small praise and worship, and then somebody preaches, and then everybody have a cup of tea, and then zoom home,
Mm.
and there's no heart issues discussed, and there's no real life issues discussed, and so I think a lot has to do with our local churches as well, speaking through its men's ministry and inviting the younger men to come in, join in, talking about responsibility, talking about the need to, to come and talk if you need to talk. Some of the older gentlemen, mentoring the younger generation, in how to deal with issues as well. So I think that a lot has to do with mentoring, a lot has to do with transparency in men's ministries in the local church as well. And so yeah, I've actually been involved in church for over 30 years or so, and
Yeah.
I've hardly heard men honestly, men don't like to talk about these
Mm.
issues. So I think it's got to be maybe brought into a place where men can speak to other men about issues as well.
Mm.
And and I thank God that Life Runners, during our training with Beautiful Feet, also has opened the door for men to be trained as well.
Yeah.
How to be a voice as well during the crisis pregnancy as well. See, so yeah, see, so I thank God that some of the men in the Life Runners ministry are also trained volunteers as well. So it's not just the woman speaking to woman. Our men are also trained to speak to other men, but I think it comes back to the local church as well. Allowing, sort of encouraging older men to speak to the younger generation. Opening doors, encouraging them to be mentored, speak one on one, going out for coffee with other men, talking about issues. Because you will normally see women going out for coffee more in Fiji, but you'll hardly see men, going out for coffee with other men and talking about issues. And normally when you go out for coffee, it's normally talking about rugby and
Right. Yeah.
and some of this other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's vital because I think quite often men are the silent sufferers in
Mm,
this issue. Sometimes it's the woman has gone along and had the abortion and the man really wanted the baby, but the woman
yeah.
just did that. Or there's times where
Mm,
the man has pressured the woman into having an abortion. So we want to help
yeah.
understand men. But one of the
Mm,
women who I interviewed for my next book, Fijian woman who's had an abortion, she said her partner dropped her off, picked her up after she'd had the abortion from the
mm,
doctor. He dropped her home
yeah.
and then he went and played tennis and never talked about it again until their
Wow.
marriage was getting very tough because you can't hold.
Yeah.
And eventually she
Yeah.
just said to him, "You need counseling or this is not going to
Mm,
last." And then
yeah.
finally he got counseling and all that he had been carrying, even though it didn't happen to him physically, it's still his part, he's half the child.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why it's so important that we don't ignore men on this issue.
Yeah.
And that as
Yeah.
women, we just don't say it's my body, my choice, because there's other
Mm,
people involved in it. So, this is why I love that you, as a man and a pastor and a community
mm,
leader, you're standing up, you're
mm,
speaking out, you're
yeah.
having the public conversations, but the private ones. So thank you so,
Yeah.
so much. Before
Thank
we
you. Thank
leave,
you.
our time is up. Any last words that you'd like to give to people listening?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I just want to say that basically we found that abortion is actually a spiritual issue. It's not just a lust issue or a wrong choice issue. It's actually a spiritual issue. Eh? And this actually came to a head when we prayed for a lady, who was suffering from cancer. And so when we laid hands on her, the Lord actually showed us, through a vision, that there was a demon that looked like a baby attached to her thigh, attached to her leg, holding on. And so when we questioned her whether she did an abortion, she said, no, no, I didn't. And she denied. And so there she was, cancer. Her hair was very thin. She was skin and bone. And so when we asked her, well, have you participated in abortion? Have you helped anyone to have an abortion? She said, no, 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 no. But the lady who was looking after her actually started speaking up and said, no, she was the lady in the village who used to give leaves, a special kind of herbs, to other young girls to have an abortion. And so when we asked her about it, when the truth was actually revealed, and she actually confessed it, when we prayed for her again, because I forgot to mention, when we were trying to drive out the demon, it refused to go. And so when she confessed it, that she was actually helping other young girls to commit abortion, and then we laid hands on her, and as we rebuked that spirit, it left. And then a few months later, we actually saw her in the nanny town looking healthy. She had put on weight, the hair had grown back, and I asked her, how are you? And she smiled. She said, I'm well. Thank you. And I said, are you going to church? She said, yes, yes, I'm going to church now. She had, I think, given up all those stuff and all that. But the thing that comes to my mind is that people should realize is that abortion is actually a spiritual issue. It sort of introduces a culture of death, into the family. And
Yeah.
so I would encourage, everybody who's listening, just bear that in mind, and realize that Christ came to give life, and he came to give life in abundance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. And I just want to end with, if you've had an abortion, again, I'm going to put the link here to Life Runners. This is not to condemn or judge you in any way. God wants to
Yeah.
restore and redeem and heal you, whether you're the male or the female. If you're pregnant at the moment and don't know where to turn, again, please reach out to Life Runners. They would
Yeah.
love to help you because, yeah, there's freedom and hope. So thank you for tuning in today. Thank you, Pastor Conan. Keep up the amazing work. And
Amen.
yeah, we just love what Life Runners does across Fiji. God bless.
Thank you.